YouTubers, Mike Martin's here, Mike Martin's channel, bringing you a very, very interesting article here from Australia. And Australians have been on the sidelines for so long in this housing crisis. And Australia has been basically in a bull run. I keep saying this in every video when I talk about Australia, but they've been basically in a bull run in their housing market since 1975 AD. So if you bought it around that time, you could have used your house as basically an ATM and lived right off the coattails off the equity. But unfortunately, more people were born after 1979, and the problem with that is a lot of people had a hard time getting into the market. People eagerly waiting on the sidelines to try and buy in, and they can't because the wages do not pan out or balance out to buy into the market. So let's take a look at this, guys. There's a beautiful article here that was put up, kind of gets to the point, and it's the housing blame game this summer, guys. Join me on my Trends of the Housing Market every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Tijuana time. I got a lot of people from down under watching, and New Zealand watching, and the UK watching. Come on, call in. I'll have call-ins. I need people to get tuned into the show because it's happening in every English-speaking country in the world, or Commonwealth, or whatever you want to call it. And it's good that we kind of combine our minds from all over the Commonwealth to bring some sort of closure to what is happening to the basic element of housing, a basic need that is required to protect you from the Mother Nature and bad weather and all kinds of stuff. That means Mother Nature too. But anyways, this is an article by The Conversation. The Conversation from Down Under. How migration affects housing affordability. So much of Australia's history and success is built on immigration. Migrants have benefited incumbent Australians by rising incomes, increasing innovation, contributing to government budgets, smoothing overpopulation, aging, and diversifying our social fabric. But it also true that immigration is affecting the house prices and rents. It sure is. Australian governments are squandering the gains from migration with poor housing and infrastructure policies. Our new report, Housing Affordability Reimagining the Australian Dream, shows what's at stake. Unless the states reform their planning system to allow more housing to be built, the Commonwealth should consider tapping the brakes on Australia's migrant intake. You don't think so? Well, it took you a whole 2 generations to get totally bought out of the market to figure this out? Anyway, so the Australian proper isn't having kids anymore. The Australian proper isn't getting the younger people aren't getting married anymore because they want to hold back, because they want to lay roots. Everyone's holding back on getting married, vacation, travel, jobs, not taking jobs because they can't afford the rent. There is so much at stake with this housing crisis, and it's affecting everyone that lives within the Australian continent. Australians' migration policy, is its de facto population policy. The population is growing about 350,000 a year. I beg to differ. I think that's a lot more than that. More than half of this is due to immigration. I would say 400,000 immigrants a year. That's what I'm guessing. Since 2005, net overseas migration, which includes increase in temporary migrants, has averaged 200,000 per year, up from 100,000 in the previous decade. It is predicted to be around 240,000 per year over the next few years. Immigrants are more likely to move to Australia's big cities than existing residents, which means demand for scarce urban housing. In 2011, 86% of immigrants lived in major cities compared to 65% of the Australian-born population. That's the Australian proper. So, back to what I was saying. So, now these major cities, the infrastructure is falling apart because doctors, lawyers, technicians, engineers, police officers, garbage men can't afford to live in their big cities anymore, and they have to commute 2 hours. It's basically bending over and saying, here you go, Your Majesty. I've come 2 hours to pick up your garbage. Not surprisingly, several studies have found that migration increases house prices, especially when there are constraints on building enough new homes. The pickup immigration coincides with Australia's most recent housing price boom. Sydney and Melbourne are taking more migrants than ever. Australia house prices have increased 50% in the past 5 years, and by 70% in Sydney. So when I keep telling you guys Australia's been in a housing bull market since 1979 AD, you gotta believe me when I tell you this. Of course, immigration isn't the only factor driving up house prices and rents. Housing also costs more because income rose, interest rates fell, and banks made it easier to get a loan. But adding 2 million migrants to the past decade has clearly increased how many new homes are needed. We haven't built enough homes. Here comes the supply and demand issue. Housing demand for immigration shouldn't lead to higher prices if enough dwellings are built quickly at low cost. In post-war Australia, record rates of home building matched rapid population growth. House prices barely moved. But over the last decade, home building did not keep pace in increases in demand, and prices rose. Throughout the 90s, Australian cities built about 800 new homes for every extra 1,000 people. They built half as many over the past 8 years. So you telling me none of these people died too? None of these people passed on? So they're filling the gaps in with immigration. They're filling the gaps. They're realizing that people living in Australia can't afford to have kids, settle down and have families like they did post-war. So they're trying to kind of, right after the end of the war, and they're trying to realize, wait a minute, we're seeing a huge drop. We need to line our pockets, or we need to figure something out, because this is going to be, it's not going to be good for our market, right? Because the housing market is so heavily tied to Australia's economy, just like Canada and the UK is, and United States not really. The United States still has a GDP and they still export, but where countries like Australia doesn't export anymore, their mining's in the pits. You get it? Mining in the pits, pit mining. Anyways, whatever. I'm not funny. We estimate somewhere between 450 and 550 more new homes are needed for each 1,000 new residents after accounting for demolitions. And because more families are breaking up and the population is aging, more homes are needed to accommodate households with fewer members. The imbalance between demand and supply has consequences. Younger and poorer households are paying more for the housing, and owning a home depends more on who your parents are. A big change from early 1980s. Here's the chart. Construction lagged population decade, showing where it's picked up. So there it is. New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, and Australia as a whole, I guess. Only in the past couple of years has construction started to match population growth, especially in Sydney. It has to, because housing has become a huge economic tie. Of course it's going to match it. It's like oil. If you had all the oil in the ground, you'll just pump out all that oil and hope that oil keeps going up. It's the same thing. You're banked on housing now. Bank it on housing, and guess what happens? You go ahead and increase your economy and build your economy off housing and get that construction going. Let's get the labor force up. Let's get the materials coming in, and let's get this place rolling. And then when you're so banked on one thing, guess what happens? Look what happened to Venezuela. The backlog of decade of undersupply remains. Development at today's record rates are bare minimum needed to meet record population growth built into Sydney's and Melbourne's housing supply targets over the next 40 years. Strong housing construction will need to be maintained to meet cities' planned housing targets. Right there, people. It tells you right here. It's by the year here. It's all broken down. So what should the government do? This is a really good question. It's a really long article, too. So what should the government do? I'll just read this part for you guys, and I'll leave a link below if you want to. Building more housing will improve the affordability the most, but slowly, even at the current record construction rates, new housing increases the stock dwelling by 2% each year, but building an extra 50,000 homes per year nationwide for a decade would lead to national house between 5 to 20% lower than otherwise. Do it for longer and prices will fall even further. State governments need to fix planning rules to allow more housing to be built in inner middle ring suburbs. More small-scale urban infill projects should be allowed without council planning approval, and state governments should allow denser developments as of right. Along key transport corridors and the Commonwealth can help with financial incentives for these reforms. But policies of planning in major cities is fraught. Wonder what that means. Most people in established middle suburbs already own their houses. Prospective residents who don't already live there can't vote in council elections, and their interests are largely unrepresented. If we want to maintain current migration levels along with their economic, social, budgetary benefits, we need to do better at planning to allow more housing to be built. So guys, what do you think of this article? They're starting to come out into light. They're kind of starting to pinpoint and show different things, fractures, kind of starting to point the finger a bit. But wait till Q1. Ooh, second week of April. I can't wait. I'm going to have a Trends in the Housing Market the second the Q1 numbers are released for the first quarter of 2018. I'll have a Trends in the Housing Market, a 2 or 3 hour show. I'll try and get Formifist Network if he wants to be on the show. The Lost Canuck to be on the show. I'll see if I could get Nick Green to be on the show, housing expert from Vancouver. Try and get some more people on the show to see if they can if we get some sort of a good show together for you guys. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. I'd like to know what you guys think down under. I think what they're starting to do is starting to kind of release the information so it's not a big surprise, and they could say 6 months down the road during the great Australian blame game. This summer, with the capital outflow of China to zero coming into Australia, it's going to be the great Australian blame game for the housing crisis. I can't wait to see what happens down under. Anyways, guys, comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my videos, and tell your friends about me. Let them know. You know, there's this guy out there, I don't know who he is, but he's been talking about Australian housing market for the last 5 years. Let me know. Comment below. Thank you.